What's up, dudes? I'm back with another video. Today we'll be looking at albums that turn 10 years old. That's right, albums from 2015. Yes, it was that long ago. I'm going to look at 15 albums as it's 2015. We'll be going through those as they came out throughout the year and reviewing them and just giving you guys a general insight into the albums themselves. But first, I'll be doing a little bit of a pop culture rewind to get you back into the mindset of 2015. Which movies were out in 2015? The Force Awakens was released, and you know what? I actually liked it at the time. I thought, yeah, it's a soft reboot, but you know, it's a solid start. It can only get better from here. Oh boy, how wrong was I? Avengers Age of Ultron also came out. One of my personal favourite science fiction films, Ex Machina, Mad Max Fury Road, 007 Spectre, The Martian, they were all released in 2015, so not a bad year for movies. Apple released Apple Music. I thought it was way further back than that, but apparently it's 2015. And the iPhone 6 was released. So yeah, just think about how many iPhone numbers it's gone up since then. Drake released the music video for Hotline Bling. It's a banger, but of course it gave us the classic meme that we all use today, the no thanks Drake meme. Holland, of course, was cast as Spider-Man. And obviously we were like, who is this kid? But actually it turned out to be pretty good. What was happening with festivals at the time? Who was playing? Do you remember? Kanye, of course, headlined Glastonbury to, I don't know, a mixed reception, I would say. Slam Dunk had Yumi at 6 and The Architects headlining. Bloodstock had Trivium, Within Temptation and Rob Zombie. 2000 Trees had Def Havana and Alkaline Trio. And finally, Download had Slipknot, Muse and Kiss. That was actually one of the downloads that I didn't go to because I was moving from London to Gloucestershire. So yeah, 2015 was actually a pretty big year for me because after that, my life pretty much completely changed. Okay, that's the history lesson over. Let's get to the albums. As I said before, we're going to go through these as they came out throughout the year. So first off, on January 14th, 2015, Enter Shikari released The Minesweep. This one comes off the back of one of my favourite Shikari albums, A Flash Flood of Colour. They continue, as they did before, to make the album as diverse as possible. The spoken word intro kicks everything off. It doesn't really quite have the vibe that it did on The Flash Flood of Colour, but it's still pretty good, and once the track progresses and speeds up, it's awesome. Anaesthetist is hands down one of my favourite Shikari songs. It's always just such a banger. It sounds like Prodigy if they were combined with metal. The Last Garrison is another banger with a great chorus and a mix of electronica and metal. Again, they just do that so well. Never Let Go of the Microscope reminds me of like a mid-90s pop when they used loads of hip-hop beats, if that makes any sort of explanation, okay. The Bank of England reminds me of a Steve Vai solo song, minus the insane solos. I know that sounds really weird, but his stuff sounded just like that song, but with insane solos over it as well. There's a Price on Your Head is reminiscent of like Sixth or Dengar Escape Plan, really just proggy as hell, absolutely loved it. It's definitely an eclectic mix of sounds, this album. Critics at the time gave the record a lot of praise, but for me it doesn't really reach the heights of the aforementioned Flash Flood of Colour, but it's a very strong album, and of course if you're a Shikari fan or of anything electronic and metal, it's definitely one you should listen to. Weirdly, the next day, on the 15th of January, Marilyn Manson released Pale Emperor. After what I consider to be a very poor Manson album in Born Villain, this one isn't really a return to form, instead it's a complete change in direction. The band moves away from the industrial sound that you're sort of like accustomed to hearing with Manson and moves towards a more alternative bluesy sound, like almost alternative rock sound. It's very different to anything that they've done before, like closer to Queens of the Stone Age than anything industrial metal. It was interesting hearing this one and the switch up for the first time because you were like, what are they going to do? I'm expecting, you know, them to come out with some industrial metal, but they're just coming out with all of this strange alt-rock stuff. The album's produced by Tyler Bates, who was known at the time for doing TV and video game soundtracks. He also played a lot of instruments on the album itself, so it basically just gave the whole of Marilyn Manson a brand new vibe. As it kicks off, it's something different. Killing Strangers starts off the album with, you know, like a rock and roll guitar. Deep Six is close to something you'd normally expect from Manson, with a bit of screaming, some distorted guitars as well. Third day of a 7-day binge. Again, very bluesy and moody. I'd call it like beautifully depressing. It's really, really good, but quite depressing. Mephistopheles of Los Angeles goes the same way. Really nice rhythms, really bluesy again. Birds of Hell Waiting had some great reverb and delayed vocals that give it like a really strange vibe. And it all ends with like a Mechanical Animals reminiscent style, The Fall of House of Death. Yeah, they experimented so much with this, and that would continue into the album after this, which is Heaven Upside Down. I do prefer Heaven Upside Down to Pale Emperor, but I do honestly think if you like rock, or if you like Queens of the Stone Age, or any of that more contemporary alternative rock stuff, even if you don't like Manson, I think you might absolutely dig this album, just because this and the one after are so different to anything that he's done. So yeah, definitely go and check this one out. Still in January, on the 27th of Jan 2015, Papa Roach released the album Fear. This one is coming off the back of what many Papa Roach fans consider the Rebirth album, which was 2012's The Connection. This one takes the reins, stays on the same path, you know, the catchy post-nu metal anthems done with like ferocity, genuine love for the messages that are contained in them, basically just what Papa Roach do. They really do believe in what they're doing. The album kicks off with the powerful Face Everything and Rise, an absolute banger that is. You should go and listen to that track. It's probably one of their most underrated singles, I would say. Also, the next track, Skeletons, has to be among the most underrated tracks that Papa Roach have ever had. It's a proper anthem. I'm surprised they never released it as a single. Broken As Me continues in the same vein. Falling Apart is a great mix of like a ballad with a little bit of bounce to it as well. The same could be said for Love Me Till It Hurts. Gravity kind of has a really cool feature from Marina Brink from In This Moment. This is what I call the P. Roach sweet spot. This album's like directly sandwiched in the middle of like two other really amazing solid albums. Obviously 2013's The Connection that I just spoke about, and then after this they put out 2017's Crooked Teeth. It's just sandwiched in that little sweet spot of Papa Roach where there's just three absolutely quality albums that you can listen to back to back. So yeah, I would say this one's definitely worth a listen. If you haven't heard it before, go and check it out. On March 31st, 2015, 3 Days Grace released Human. So after the departure of Adam Gauthier and the less than successful Transit of Venus album, which I do think is slightly underrated still, even though it didn't do very well at the time, the band needed to obviously move on and move forward, so they selected Matt Walst as the replacement for Adam Gauthier, and my God, like a duck to water. His more sort of gruff vocals blended perfectly with the music. They changed it slightly from what they were doing on the previous album, and I genuinely think it took the band to a new level. This album is absolutely full of great 3 Days Grace moments. They chose to up the distortion, obviously pull back the electronic elements that they were using on Transit of Venus, and my God, did it work. Human Race is a great opener, really slow and steady build. Painkiller is an absolute powerhouse track. It's catchy as hell, definitely showing off how powerful Matt's voice could be. Iron Machine is one of the best singles that the band has ever put out. It's such a shame I've never heard them play it live. I think I've seen 3 Days Grace 3 or 4 times now, and I've never heard them play Iron Machine, which is crazy considering that it's got so many plays on YouTube. The video's like quite big. So What and Car Crash again continue the momentum. You know, Matt really bringing a different sort of side to the vocals that we saw before. And the record finishes with the piano-driven mantra, The Real You. I mean, it's just an absolutely solid album, a great start for a brand new singer for a band that's such a huge band at the time. And to be honest, probably most of the fan group actually weren't disappointed. You know, that Adam left, we were disappointed with that, but my God, what an album to start off. Being a singer for a new band that you've just joined, my God, it's incredible. Yeah, so if you're a 3 Days Grace fan and you haven't heard it, I recommend it, but I recommend it for anyone that likes that sort of alternative, you know, post nu metal era American stuff. Go and check it out. Skipping ahead to May, on May 19th, 2015, Faith No More released Soul Invictus. I swear this band loves making us wait for albums. This one at the time was their first since 1997's Album of the Year, and obviously now it's been 10 years since they released this one. Soul Invictus, which means unconquered sun in Latin, yes, I did research that, continues where the last album left off, even though it had been such a long time. Mike Patton's vocals, as always, absolutely top notch, from screams to croons to cleans. It's definitely an eclectic mix of music, going from prog to metal to ska and basically just anything that this band wants to do. Lyrically, obviously, it's just as strange, covering everything from leprechauns to sunburn victims. Some really great moments throughout the record, though. The title track starts things off nicely, sort of easing you in, then coming after that, the more proggy Superhero. Sunny Side Up gives you a sort of more funky edge, some really great lyrics about an egg, which I always crack up at. Separation Anxiety, oh my god, it's definitely the fiercest song the band have done since Angel Dust, which obviously is their most well-known album. My god, that song Separation Anxiety absolutely rips, and he shreds his vocal cords towards the end. It's fantastic. And finally, the only single from the album, which is Motherfucker, a strange, weird, spoken-esque mantra poem thing. It's very, very strange, but definitely worth checking out. An interesting listen. It's definitely worth your time if you're already a Faith No More fan. I wouldn't recommend it to like a new Faith No More fan just because it's so weird. I would say go and listen to, you know, Angel Dust or the first album, but it's definitely worth your time if you are a muso or if you like Faith No More and you've never heard it. Go and check it out. On the 1st of June 2015, Paradise Lost released The Plague Within. Picking up where they left off on Tragic Idol, but adding some of the doom metal elements that were prevalent on the early albums. The band had been on quite a run at this point, putting out literally solid albums since 2002 Symbol of Life. Like every single album has been great since then. And this one's no different. No Hope in Sight is a great opener, which is a glimpse into everything that the band has done throughout their career, sort of culminating in all the elements that I've just talked about, plus including the clean vocals that the band started doing in the sort of late 90s, early 2000s. Eternity of Lies introduces a more orchestral feel. It's got some really, really nice solos as well. Beneath the Broken Earth might be the most doomy song the band has ever recorded. Absolutely filthy, and Nick Holmes' vocals are on absolute point. My god, if you like any doom stuff, that's the one to check out. Sacrifice to Flame also is the same vocally, but adds more of the sort of goth elements that they picked up in the 2000s, so the sort of things we've been accustomed to hearing from the band. Cry Out is similar in that respect, and the ending track, Return to the Sun, combines everything again that you've heard across the album in one final big bang. I mean, not my personal favourite Paradise Lost album, but if you're a fan or if you like anything doomy, especially like doom metal stuff, you will love this album because it really is in that vein, so definitely go and check it out. Just before Download 2015, obviously with them headlining the festival, on the 5th of June, Muse released the album Drones. This one actually came onto my radar at the time due to the shift towards a sort of more alternative rock sound, even with some shades of metal on some of the tracks. So that really piqued my interest. I remember someone playing me one of the tracks and I was like, oh, okay, I'm definitely going to check out this album. The change is probably why the alternative press, you know, the sort of enemy-loving crowd didn't really like it that much. They gave it some mixed reviews, but make no mistake, this is an awesome album full of great riffs and amazingly catchy vocal lines as well. Just the sort of stuff that Muse do, but just beefed up a little bit. It's also a concept album about the dehumanization of modern warfare. A lot of high moments on this one. Psycho is a monster of a track with those sort of big muff sounds, that bouncy riff, and of course Matt Bellamy's classic high vocals. They're just absolutely incredible. A headbang on that one. Mercy is more of sort of a classic Muse track with the build-up guitar, piano, and then sort of more of their sort of proggier side stuff you're sort of accustomed to hearing from them. Reapers follow suit with a more guitar-driven direction. The Handler, probably the heaviest track, is an absolute beast. You know, methodically designed to basically give you that face. Like, it's so good. Aftermath is very reminiscent of something that would have been on sort of Dire Straits, Brothers in Arms. It's very sort of, you know, bluesy-ish guitar, very Mark Knopfler, and then sort of builds up throughout. It's a really, really good Muse album, and definitely worth your time. If it's one that you've missed and you've been a Muse fan, you should definitely check it out. If you're a fan of metal or alternative metal, you know, anything with a little bit of beef to it, but is still deemed to be really, really catchy, I guarantee you will like this album because it's all of those things wrapped up into one. Moving into July, on the 10th of July 2015, Cradle of Filth released Hammer of the Witches. The album's source material and title actually comes from the famous document, the Malleus Maleficarum, which means Hammer of the Witches in Latin. This document was published in the late 15th century. Basically, it was a guide for hunting witches and persecuting witches and it ended up killing like hundreds of thousands of people that shouldn't be killed. It's crazy. 2 years before this, they released the Manticore and Other Horrors, which I consider to be my least favourite Cradle of Filth album. The band wanted to add new blood to the ranks, as they'd done Manticore and Other Horrors as a 3-piece, which was really, really weird. So they had Ashok and Richard Shaw come in on guitars, and also a new keyboardist and female vocalist, Lindsay Schoolcraft. So the two guitarists added so much diversity to the riffs, the way they were delivered. The guitars were really, really taken up a notch. Mathis' drumming, once again, is absolutely top draw on this album. So good. And his album is what you would expect from the Filth. It's just executed so well. Even Danny Filth sounds invigorated. The production's a step up from the album that I mentioned before. Fantastic songs like Immortally, Deflowering the Maidenhead, Vampire at My Side, and of course the colossal single Blackest Magic in Practice literally makes this album a tour de force when it comes to Cradle of Filth albums, and I do see it ranked quite high on people's lists, and for good reason. It's very good. So if you're a fan of the Filth and you haven't heard this one, I'm sure you have, but if you haven't, go check it out. And of course, if you like your black gothy kind of stuff, I recommend you to check it out as well, because it is awesome. Moving into August, on August 7th 2015, Fear Factory released Genexus. From the production to the performances, this is a top-notch Fear Factory album. Somehow heavier than some of their other albums, but yet more accessible. This album literally makes it sound like your speakers are going to explode. The production is insane. Rhythm section is in full swing, absolutely killing it. Guitars are on point, great riffs, filthy tones, and vocally, it's definitely one of Burton's greatest performances, there is no doubt. Another concept album, they liked those in Fear Factory, based on Roy Batty, the android from Blade Runner. So yeah, very, very cool source material. Autonomous combat system kicks things off, setting you up the story, giving you sort of a taste of what you're in for, but not giving you too much. Anodized is an absolutely crushing mix of synths and robotic industrial riffs, the sort of stuff that you would expect. Great killer chorus as well. The big single that came out from this one was Dielectric. Could be something that was on Digimortal. It sort of sounds like the 2000s style, but with a more modern edge. Absolutely cracking breakdown in that as well. The drumming from Mike Heller is absolutely crazy on this album. Soul Hacker pushes speakers to the absolute limit. Literally, it sounds like your speakers are just ready to pop from wherever they are. The bass is just turned up so high. It's great. Great hook on that track as well. Church of Execution, another riff. Great riff on there. It's just filled with gem riffs, this album. That pushes it along. Regenerate, probably the most underrated Fear Factory song for me. Pure 2000 sound. You know, it could easily fit in on the Archetype album. God, I wish they would play that track live. Whenever I look down the list of Fear Factory live, I'm always like, come on. Damn, they're not playing Regenerate. Really annoying. And the record finishes with the epic expiration date, cramming in loads of Blade Runner references, Burton's epic voice, loads of synths. Oh, it's just an amazing way to end. So yeah, an absolute beast of an album. Like I said before, heavier but more accessible. Just a great mix of Fear Factory fans, and it really does stand up alongside the classics like Demanufacture and Obsolete. This one is definitely worth your time if you like Fear Factory especially. I'm sure you've heard stuff off of this, but if you haven't heard it all the way through, you should. And if you like any form of metal, definitely go and check out this album. Still in August, on August 14th 2015, Soulfly released Archangel. Coming in at only 36 minutes, which is very, very, very short for a metal album especially. It's Soulfly's shortest album, yeah, of course. This was a really good period for the band. They've been on a great run since 2012's Enslaved, and that would continue after this album as well. They've basically just put out bangers for years. A lot of really nice soundscapes in this album. Lyrically and vocally, the album was approached differently, with Max writing lyrics and vocal lines after the music was recorded, where usually they would do those at the same time. So yeah, it was kind of just gives it a whole new vibe, really, vocally, more dynamic. The riffs and rhythms on this one are absolutely stellar. It starts with an absolute banger and the raw as hell We Sold Ourselves to Metal. The title track is what you come to expect from the band, combining great guitar work with a tribal sort of sound. Sodomites has absolutely crushing guitars, killer chorus, also makes use of the really great synth synth choir parts. Ishtar Rising, very similar to those respects, but obviously the two tracks just gel together seamlessly. In fact, you can't even tell when that track ends, Sodomites ends and Ishtar Rising begins, because they just put them together like one giant track, which is awesome. Titans and Mother of Dragons are also hugely entertaining. This record's stepping in a more death metal direction, so compared to the last one, it really is a step up in metal, basically. But yeah, that sort of vibe fits the religious subject matter really, really well. It definitely gets better and better with each listen. I can definitely recommend this for any metalheads out there. Go and check it out. It's great. The last one in August, man, August was a great month for albums in 2015. On August 21st, 2015, Ghost released Meliora. When this one came out, I was a bit skeptical, as I loved their last album, Festamam, so much. But I was pleasantly surprised. They'd modernised the sound from the previous record. That one had a more 70s sound. This one still has that element, but they sort of just brought it up and modernised it a little bit, gave it a more modern direction. Spirit is a great opener that really sort of eases you in from the last album. It's actually a really nice transition segue from the last album into this one if you were to listen to them back to back. But then obviously once the second track, From the Pinnacle to the Pit, begins, it reveals this is a whole new era of Ghost and another step up in their sound, presentation. Great riffs as always, great vocal lines, great synths all the way throughout. Cerise is an absolutely epic and powerful ballad. It kind of captures the rare emotional side for the band as well. It has like little bits of emotion in there that you don't normally hear from them. He is an epic tale of suicide, drowning in vocal layers. Mummy Dust as well is a great look into how proggy they can be. It really does just beef up that sort of progginess, and you think, wow, this band could just release a prog rock album and it would be absolutely fantastic. The deluxe edition of the album is boosted, of course, by the inclusion of Square Hammer, which is one of the band's best songs but wasn't in the original version of the album. Probably my third favourite Ghost album, a welcome addition to discography. It's so good. I know Ghost are very much a Marmite band, but if you're interested in Ghost or you like Ghost and haven't heard this, I would recommend you go and check this album out because it's very good. Moving into September, on September 11th, Bring Me the Horizon released That's a Spirit. So this album is the band's fifth album. At this point, they were well on their way to becoming the band that we know today. A far cry from, of course, where they started. A big change, but from my perspective, a massively welcome one. A more alternative metal feel than the band had ever sort of tried to accomplish before. Obviously, coming off the back of the colossal Sempiternal, which is, a absolutely classic 10 out of 10 album. They didn't just want to continue where they left off, which you have to respect them for. So they just wanted to push more boundaries and try something a bit different. Doomed kicks off the album, an almost orchestral sort of instrumental layout, and Ollie doing falsetto vocals, which off the bat is just like, okay, he's going to be doing falsettos now. That's great. He's really, his voice is becoming really, really strong. This is basically a completely different band to what we expected them to be. Happy Song is obviously a massive anthem and absolutely killed on the dance floors at the time. Throne, a great mix of metal and electronica, still continues to be one of the band's biggest songs to this day. It's got 500 million plays on Spotify alone, which is crazy. True Friends is great, and the somber but pretty Follow You, obviously continuing to push the record along and just break boundaries. They were just trying whatever they wanted to at this point. And Drown, of course, another massive ballad sort of reminiscent of mid-2000s emo. Not my favourite Bring Me the Horizon album, but of course a solid one nonetheless. It pushed the band's sound even further than they were trying. They wanted to move well away from where they started, and obviously we know now where they were going, but at this time we had no idea what they would continue to sound like. So yeah, definitely a record that's worth your time. It sits probably in the middle of my favourite Bring Me the Horizon albums, but still one you should definitely check out if you haven't. Moving into October, on October 2nd, 2015, Deaf Heaven released New Bermuda. This album came onto my radar at the time because it was on a lot of people's top 10 lists, my favourite top 10 albums of 2015. Man, was I blown away by this album. One of the most progressive takes on metal I've ever heard. It's difficult to explain to you guys this album without you listening to it, but imagine the black metal of Mayhem, the prog of Dender Escape Plan, and the sensibility that you'd expect from a shoegaze band. Some would consider it black gaze, which is a subgenre that combines black metal and shoegaze. Although I think trying to box this album into a genre is actually doing it a disservice, because it is sort of black gaze, but also it has so much more than that. It ebbs and flows seamlessly between genres, literally without you noticing as well. Some of the more somber moments are great. You know, you have piano, huge soundscapes with some more sort of post-rock take on guitars. And then before you know it, you're into, you know, double pedal and black metal trilling. So yeah, if any of that sounds interesting to you, I can guarantee you this album is worth your time. It really is like an incredible journey. You know, if you like any black metal, I think you should listen to it. If you like any shoegaze, I think you should listen to it. And I think if you like any sort of progressive metal, I can guarantee you will just get a kick out of listening to this album and how just insane it is and how great it is at the same time. So yeah, definitely recommend this one. You should go and check it out. Staying in October for the last two, on October 16th, Fightstar released Behind the Devil's Back. For me, probably one of the most underrated albums of the 2010s. Like, this album is insanely good. It captures a perfect mix of like dreamy style modern shoegaze with synthwave elements, topped by proper metal riffage. It'd been 6 years since their previous album, and trust me, this was well worth the wait. The opener, Sharp Tongue, has a absolutely crushing riff that's contrasted, of course, by Charlie Simpson's amazing high falsetto vocals. His screaming actually across the whole album is absolutely stellar. Basically, the band Loathe listened to the first track and said, yep, that's basically what we want to do. This complete rip-off. The title track could have been a B-side from Deftones' Saturday Night Wrist era, like some really great experimentation throughout that song and this album in general. The Blackest of Birds reminds me of the unfortunately forgotten band now In Me. Definitely sounds like an In Me song. Overdrive mixes a lot of synthwave, no doubt an inspiration. Their guitarist Alex Westerway, his side project is Gunship, if you know who they are, so they're like a synthwave band, but he sort of incorporated those sounds into this album and it really, really worked. He also offers his vocals on the next track, More Human Than Human. It's a great contrast going from one singer and then unexpectedly getting another singer. He's just a great singer as well, so it really, really works. One of my favourite tracks, Animal, has an absolutely killer chorus. I mean, Charlie tears apart his vocal cords in the verses. It's just great. Sync with the Snakes as well has some absolutely incredible riffage, really catchy choruses. And the album finishes off with Dive, which is an incredible album ender. It builds up like a Sleep Token song, you know, leaving that payoff right to the end, just builds and builds and builds, and then of course you finish in some sort of gent heaven. I literally could spend the whole video talking about how much I love this record. I'll just say that everything on this album blends seamlessly. It's fantastic. It's an exciting listen from start to finish. A must listen for me, and one of my favourite albums from the entirety of 2010. So if any of that interests you, you will really, really like this one. And the final album from 2015 that I'm going to highlight for you guys came out on October 23rd, and it's Killing Joke with Pylon. The band's last album to feature the original lineup, weirdly. This being the band's 15th album, you would have thought at that point they'll just be going through the motions, but I can tell you this album sounds literally as fresh as a new band getting off the ground. It continues their, you know, industrial sound. Singer Jazz Coleman is just unbelievable on this. I can't believe the longevity of his vocals, and he still sounds absolutely cracking live as well. You know, killer riffs, pounding drums, they're just all over this thing. Also the production, I feel like it's made the album sound really, really big and huge. So from a production standpoint, it's also very good. The first three tracks, Autonomous Zone, Dawn of the Hive and New Cold War, a tour de force of industrial magic, you know, what you've come to expect from the band, but still really, really good. Euphoria is the anthem of the album. I always find myself singing that chorus because it gets stuck in your head. So that's a great track. New Jerusalem combines the more orchestral sounds, sort of just making it sound bigger and bigger again, but it really does blend well. My favourite track is Big Buzz. It's such a positive and uplifting track. I can't listen to it once. That song has to be listened to twice minimum. I cannot listen to Big Buzz just once. And I did notice as well, listening to it the other day, you can hear how it's influenced Burton from Fear Factory's vocals. The chorus is very much a Fear Factory chorus, so it's just crazy how much influence these guys have had. And the single that preceded the album, I'm the Virus, again is industrial, but it has more of a punk style as well, but obviously just slides into the pack nicely. And the album finishes off with Panopticon and Snake Dance, more of a proggy feel, but yeah, lots of synths, interesting time signatures, heavy guitars, killer riffs, great vocals. I mean, if you're a fan of anything industrial, this band and album is one you definitely have to check out. I still feel like Killing Joke, even though they've been going so long, don't have enough people listening to them. But I do recommend it for sort of metal listeners as well, because it is catchy and industrial, so you might also like it. But yeah, definitely go check this one out. It's sick. Yeah, so there you go, guys. Those were some albums from 2015. A really, really good year for albums. I'm sure I've missed some, so if I have, drop those in the comments. It'd be great to see which albums you guys love from 2015. But those were definitely some of the ones that I was into at the time. They really, really stood out for me, and some of those I still listen to religiously to this day. So yes, thank you very much for watching. Subscribe to the channel. Do everything you can to get this content out to everyone. I would really, really appreciate it. Thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you dudes in the next video. You should go and subscribe to my channel, just because. Come on, subscribe.